You begin with a simple assumption that knowledge, once acquired, guarantees truth. You rarely question this assumption because it feels natural to trust the mind that evaluates evidence and draws conclusions. Yet Al Ghazali, early in his inquiry, challenged this confidence. He asked whether the very act of knowing might hide unexamined conditions that shape what appears to be true. You are invited to notice how quickly you accept your own conclusions, how rarely you ask whether your standards for certainty are themselves certain. Al Ghazali recognized that the mind can construct impressive explanations while remaining unsure of its own ground. If your most confident judgments depend on instruments you have never examined, can you call that confidence rational, or is it only familiarity mistaken for truth? Al Ghazali lived in 11th century Baghdad, a city where intellectual ambition shaped public life. Scholars refined legal theory, philosophers argued for systematic coherence, and mystics spoke of inner certainty accessible through disciplined awareness. Debate was constant, and precision was valued. Within this environment, Al Ghazali mastered the tools of argument and analysis, gaining prominence among the most rigorous thinkers of his age. Yet he noticed a quiet tension beneath their confidence. Groups equally committed to reason arrived at incompatible conclusions. If disciplines built on logic and study cannot agree on fundamental truths, what does that suggest about the capacity of reason to resolve the deepest questions? As Al Ghazali examined his own knowledge, he saw that its foundations were not as firm as he once believed. The senses present conflicting reports, memory reshapes experience, even logical inference relies on principles reason cannot justify without assuming them. You are encouraged to repeat this examination for yourself. Notice how you trust perception because it is familiar, not because you have verified its reliability. Notice how you rely on reasoning without questioning the rules that govern it. In Al Ghazali's experience, doubt did not emerge from confusion but from clarity. If every mode of knowing is open to question, what remains that can stand independently as a foundation for certainty? Reason appears powerful because it orders thoughts, critiques errors, and establishes coherence. But Al Ghazali recognized that reason cannot verify the authority of its own principles. To prove rationality by rational means is to move in a circle. You begin to see this as you examine your own reliance on logic. Every argument depends on assumptions that cannot be demonstrated by the argument itself. This limit does not invalidate reason, it defines its function. Reason clarifies what lies within experience but cannot ground the fact that experience is intelligible at all. If reason cannot justify its own starting points, must there not be some aspect of understanding that reason can acknowledge but not originate? Al Ghazali often described the inner self as the field in which knowledge becomes clear or distorted. You are invited to consider that the accuracy of your conclusions may depend not only on the structure of your reasoning but on the condition of the one who reasons. Desire, fear, and subtle preference shape what feels persuasive long before argument begins. A belief may appear rational simply because it aligns with what you hope is true. For Al Ghazali, clarity required a form of purification not moral in the narrow sense, but epistemic. Distortions had to be reduced for perception to stabilize. If the heart is conflicted or driven by expectation, how can thought reflect truth without bending it? Doubt, in Al Ghazali's inquiry, was not a threat but a discipline. By questioning every belief including his most cherished convictions, he sought to distinguish what survives scrutiny from what collapses under it. You apply this discipline by examining the ideas you accept immediately, the ones you defend instinctively, and the ones you avoid considering. Doubt exposes the difference between borrowed certainty and tested certainty. Over time, some beliefs weaken, while others remain with unexpected stability. A truth that persists through questioning begins to reveal a different kind of authority. But as the process becomes more subtle, another question arises. If doubt examines everything, what examines doubt itself? After exhaustive questioning, Al Ghazali found that understanding does not always arise through argument. Some insights emerge when the mind stops defending familiar positions and allows clarity to reveal itself. You notice the shift when a conclusion no longer feels constructed but simply recognized. It is not an emotional revelation but a conceptual transparency that appears when resistance subsides. Reason participates in this process by removing errors, but the final moment of recognition is not delivered by reasoning alone. It is an alignment of thought and awareness in which what is true becomes unmistakable. If this clarity cannot be traced to a logical proof, does that make it less real or simply beyond the reach of proof? At the end of this inquiry, the mind settles into a different relationship with truth. Reason has defined its boundaries without abandoning its value. Doubt has removed what was unstable. Awareness has become less entangled with preference. In this quiet space, knowledge is no longer something you collect or defend. It functions without the tension of ownership. Al Ghazali's final clarity was not a conclusion but a condition. Truth does not need the thinker to secure it. It reveals itself when thought becomes honest enough to stop insisting. When certainty no longer depends on argument, what remains for the mind to struggle with and who remains to struggle?